Hey guys, Don here. Some of you have been asking, what are we doing right now in getting into LifePoint, this church we're starting here in Sweet Home? Some things have happened since the last time we spoke. I just want to share them with you. We're actually looking at a building here in town where those of us who want to meet and gather can come together and visit, and we can have live messages and all the things that God intended us to do with relationships. So those of you who want to support, there is a way you can actually support. We've got all of our not-for-profit church things set up. If you would like to assist financially in this, because that's really where we're at, is just how do we afford this building? If you want to assist financially, you can send to Sweet Home LifePoint, P.O. Box 851, Sweet Home, Oregon. Now in the meantime, as we continue to seek God's will, where we're going to be, and we kind of follow how we're going to land there, we're going to continue to release content online, devotionals, maybe some sermons coming up, again, some music coming up, some other things. So with that in mind, again, I hope you enjoy this. In a few days, my wife and I will be celebrating our 29th anniversary of marriage. And like a lot of you guys, during all those years, we've had lots of different jobs to try to make ends meet. Early on, we both had jobs in Albany. We were living in Albany, actually, and we both had jobs working. My wife worked at a florist shop, and I worked at the YMCA. And one of my jobs was to drive the van around to all these different daycare facilities, and I'd pick up the children, and then I'd take them back to the Y for this basic water safety class. After picking up this one group of children one day, they were very rambunctious, so I decided to give them a little game to play. So as I pulled up to a red light, I asked them all, "What does a red light mean?" And in unison, they all yelled, "Stop!" "So nice job," I said, and then the light turned green. And without prompting, they all yelled, "Go!" So we just went down the road, and as we approached the next stoplight, it turned yellow. And without me saying anything, even more loudly than the last time, every kid in that van yelled, "Speed up!" I want you to consider today that that's a funny story, but the truth is our lives are in many ways defined how we respond to the yellow lights we encounter. Yellow lights are by their very definition warnings. And as one who has spent his entire adult life working in some capacity with youth, I look back and I hear within the majority of my messages this call to heed the warnings in our life, to listen to them. And yet, I am constantly shocked and amazed by the human capacity to believe that the warnings of life are not intended for us, they're just for other people. We're going to be fine. A few years ago, when my kids were still living at the house, after I'd ushered all my teenage children out to school, my wife and I were about to relax with coffee when my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was one of my youth group kids who had overslept and he had missed his bus, and so we got in the van and we headed out to give him a ride. After picking him up, we were heading back into town when we were forced to stop by the presence of a local police car which was parked across the road. I rolled down my window and the officer pointed us onto a detour, and we just went on our way. After dropping off the kid at school, we went home and we hopped on Facebook. And we were just wondering if there was any news of what had happened, which would have closed that portion of the road. So we actually went on the police page and were surprised to find that a grenade had been found on the sidewalk. The bomb squad had arrived from Salem, and it took care of the issue in short order, but it actually got me thinking about a greater issue. Why did I follow that police officer's directives to take another route? Well, I did so because I trusted him. I trusted that he had seen the danger of what lay directly ahead. And you see, that's why we warn those people we love, because danger lies ahead. As a father, I've stood in the road and I've pointed my children to the path away from danger. I've monitored their Facebook and their Twitter and their social media, and I've pointed them away from hurtful words and dangerous interactions. You see, I've loved them enough to risk their anger as I've given them curfews, as I've limited their time they spend with certain friends, Nothing good happens after midnight is a saying my children can recite at any given time. And during their teenage years, it was usually accompanied with an eye roll. But I've just seen too many people become injured, both emotionally and actually tragically, physically, by the decisions of the fools they associate with, to allow those I love to pass around my figure in the road, who knows the danger that lies ahead, and head straight towards this grenade that awaits them. Because I've actually seen that grenade. I've chosen, as a father and as a friend, to stand firm in the middle of their paths and warn them. But the question that we have to ask ourselves, that I've had to ask myself over the years, is, do I actually have the credibility necessary for my friends, for my children, to heed my warnings? You see, going back to my story about the YMCA and the kids in that van, those children in that van, those many years ago, they were only reciting what they had been taught. They weren't telling me the words that had been spoken by their parents. They were actually telling me the actions displayed by them. Some examples. A mother tells her daughter she is beautiful just the way God created her, but then constantly hates her own body. Somebody actually warned my wife, Michelle, about this years ago when they were out on a walk, and my wife, like is common amongst most women, was just expressing some self-hatred of the way that she looked. And her friend lovingly told her, well, you need to love the way you look, because the chances are your daughter is going to be built just like you. And what are they going to listen to? How beautiful you say they are? Or the words you speak about how you don't like yourself? Another example, a father might tell his children that all people should be treated with respect, but then the words and the slang that he uses, it just devalues certain people or whole particular groups of people. Parents tell their children that sports is all about character, but then they go to the game and they just yell and scream at the officials, and then on the bus ride home, just belittle the coach's calls, the playing time, everything about it. The coach himself, and I've been a coach, so I understand the pull to do this. We tell our players that integrity is to be valued, that sports is about integrity and character, but then perhaps we look the other way at the behavior of players that are going to help us actually win. It's interesting because we so often tell our family and our friends that we would die for them. But do we actually have the courage to live for them? Do we have the selflessness required to become examples of lives lived well? Most of us have actually heard the saying, practice what we preach. But most people are not aware that it was actually Jesus who first said it. And who did he say it to? Well, he said it to religious leaders of his time whose words did not match their behaviors. I look back and so often I think of the behaviors that I hated in my kids. And I have to be honest with myself now and transparent. Some of the greatest reasons I hated them within my children when they were younger was because they were actually modeling behaviors that I hated about myself, but I was unwilling to change. And I've become aware of that over the years, and that awareness has caused me to do something. It's actually caused me to pray. It's driven me to my knees in this awareness of how broken I am, and it's caused me to pray because I want to be credible when I warn people. I want to be credible when I warn my kids and my friends and my community, that they can heed my warnings. So I pray for forgiveness for things that I have done that have actually led people astray. I pray for people to be healed over the actions I've displayed, and help constantly. Help to do what? Well, I just need help to become the father my children deserve, the grandfather probably coming in a few years that they deserve. I need help to become the friend that my friends deserve, and the pastor that my church deserves. On that chilly day years ago, I took the detour because I trusted that officer standing in the road. And so I want you to understand this. If we want those in our lives to heed our warnings, we need to be trustworthy. We need to possess integrity. I've seen the danger ahead. I desperately want people to avoid the paths that lead to destruction. Do you possess the credibility in your own home, in your workplace, in your community? Do you possess the credibility in your own life to point these people that you treasure so much to the paths which lead not to destruction, to the grenade in the road, but actually to blessings, to God's plan, to give them a hope and a future? It's a humbling question, but I pray today also that none of us shy away from this question. And why? Because the stakes are too high and the consequences are all too real. From Scripture, and I'll close with this, in Proverbs, "Now then, my sons, listen to me. Pay attention to what I say. Do not let your heart turn to her ways or stray into her paths. Many are the victims she has brought down. Her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is a highway to the grave, leading down to the chambers of death." My challenge this week to you and myself is to consider these words and ask yourself, do the people in your life that you want to listen to you because you've lived this and you know the dangers that lay ahead, do those people which matter to you, do they listen to you? Do you have the credibility within your own life to be a trusted warning? If not, man, the stakes are too high. We need to get this right. Consider this week, how do you respond to the yellow lights in your own life? Because how you respond to these are how the people you love will also respond.